The war room was silent except for the soft hum of data streams flowing across holographic displays. Fleet Commander Jothik stood at the center of the command deck, his 4 eyes scanning the tactical readouts with practiced ease. Around him, officers from across the Caltharian Empire waited for his orders. They had been waiting for this moment for 3 standard cycles. On the main display, a blue and green planet rotated slowly. Earth. The humans called it home. To the Caltharians, it was target designation 749. Just another world to add to their collection. Just another primitive species to absorb into the Empire. The 3rd planet from a yellow star in an unremarkable sector of space. Nothing special. Nothing unique. Just another conquest. Jothik had conquered 23 worlds in his career. This would be his 24th. He felt no excitement. Only the cold calculation of a predator who knew his prey could not escape. His record was perfect. Never a defeat. Never even a significant delay. He was the Empire's finest commander. This mission was a reward for his service. An easy victory to add to his legend. The probe data told a simple story. Earth was in its early space age. The humans had barely left their own moon. They possessed fusion power but not antimatter. They had satellites but not shield generators. They fought wars among themselves using primitive chemical explosives, missiles that moved slower than thought, aircraft that could not leave atmosphere, naval vessels that floated on water instead of flying through space. By galactic standards, they were children playing with toys, perfect targets, easy prey, a world ripe for taking. The Caltharian xenobiologist stepped forward. Her name was unpronounceable to human tongues. A series of clicks and whistles that meant something beautiful in her language. She presented her findings with clinical precision. Humans were carbon-based. They required oxygen. They had 2 eyes instead of 4. Weak bones. Limited strength. Short lifespans of barely 100 cycles. Nothing remarkable. Nothing threatening. Just another species that would be absorbed into the Empire like all the others. But they did have something valuable. Their world was rich in rare metals. Elements that powered Caltharian technology. Minerals worth more than 1,000 primitive civilizations. And their biosphere was compatible with Caltharian biology. The Empire could colonize Earth without extensive terraforming. Without the costly process of atmosphere conversion. Without decades of environmental modification. Just land. Claim. Settle. Standard procedure. The High Command had made their decision weeks ago. Earth would be annexed. Its resources claimed. Its population relocated to labor colonies on distant worlds. Standard procedure. The Caltharians had done this 47 times before across 847 star systems. It was a machine. A process. An inevitability. Resistance always ended the same way. With surrender and submission. But this annexation would be different. The High Command wanted to send a message to other species in this sector of space. They wanted every civilization watching to understand the futility of resistance. They wanted overwhelming force. They wanted the entire galaxy to see what happened when the Caltharian Empire decided to take a world. They wanted fear. They wanted submission. They wanted absolute dominance on display. So they assembled the largest invasion fleet in Caltharian history, 9,700 warships, each one capable of destroying a city with a single shot. Each one carrying soldiers, weapons, and the absolute certainty of victory. It was excessive, wasteful, completely unnecessary. The humans could have been conquered with 1/10 of this force, maybe less. But that was not the point. The point was the message. The warning. The demonstration of power that would echo across the galaxy for generations. When other species looked at their telescopes and saw 9,700 ships descending on one primitive world, they would understand. They would remember. They would never dare to resist, but it was perfect. A show of absolute power. A reminder to the galaxy that the Caltharian Empire was unstoppable. Jothik reviewed the fleet composition one final time. Battle cruisers formed the core. Massive vessels that could crack planets. Destroyers would sweep space around the planet, clearing debris, eliminating satellites, creating a sterile environment for the main assault. Troop carriers held 3 armies. Millions of soldiers ready to occupy every continent. Support vessels carried enough supplies for a 10-year occupation, though they would not need nearly that long. Every detail had been calculated. Every variable accounted for. Every possible complication had been planned for and solved. The tactical officer reported that all ships were ready. Reactors at full power. Energy reserves at maximum. Weapons charged and calibrated. Shields online and tested. Crews at battle stations. Medical bays prepared for casualties. Though they expected few, the Armada waited only for his command. 9,700 ships. 2 million crew members, all waiting for one word from him. Jothic gave the order. The fleet jumped to hyperspace. The journey would take 6 months. 6 months of travel through the dark spaces between stars. 6 months for the crews to train and prepare. 6 months for the humans to remain ignorant of their approaching doom. 6 months of anticipation, of preparation, of absolute certainty that when they arrived, victory would be swift and complete. Or so the Caltharians thought. 3 months into the journey, a small observatory on Earth detected something unusual. Gravitational anomalies in deep space, patterns that did not match any known natural phenomena. The readings were faint, barely detectable, but they were there, and they were moving. The astronomer who found it spent 2 weeks checking his calculations, running every test, verifying every reading, thinking he had made a mistake, hoping he had made a mistake. Then he reported it to his government. The report traveled up the chain of command, from local authorities to national governments, from governments to international agencies. Scientists debated its meaning, held conferences, published papers, argued about interpretations. Governments held secret meetings behind closed doors. Military leaders reviewed defense capabilities and found them inadequate. Most thought it was nothing, a cosmic event, a measurement error, a glitch in the system. A few suspected the truth, and those few began to prepare for the worst. As the months passed, more observatories confirmed the readings. The anomalies were getting closer, moving with purpose, following a direct course toward Earth. This was not natural. This was not random. This was not a mistake. This was something coming for them. Something big, something powerful, something that would change everything. The United Nations called an emergency session. Representatives from every nation gathered in New York. For once, old enemies sat at the same table. For once, ancient conflict seemed small and distant. For once, humanity looked at itself and realized how fragile it was, how unprepared, how vulnerable. They all understood what the data meant, what the readings showed, what the future held. Earth was not alone in the universe, and whoever was out there was coming. Coming fast, coming with purpose, coming in numbers that made their best weapons seem like toys. The world prepared in the only way it knew how. Military forces mobilized. Troops moved to strategic positions. Weapons were moved into position. Nuclear arsenals were readied. Scientists worked day and night on theoretical defenses. Engineers tried to build weapons that might work against unknown technology. Governments stockpiled supplies. Cities prepared evacuation plans. But everyone knew the truth. If this was an invasion, Earth had no real defense, no real hope, no real chance. Then the message came. It arrived on every radio frequency. Every satellite received it. Every communication device on the planet picked up the signal. Phones, radios, televisions, computer screens. Everything with a receiver suddenly showed the same message. The message was translated into every human language simultaneously. English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, Hindi. Every language spoken by more than 1 million people. The technology behind it was impossible by human standards. Magic by any other name. The message was simple, direct, devastating in its clarity. The Caltharian Empire had arrived. Earth and all its people now belonged to them. Resistance would be met with destruction. Complete and total annihilation. Surrender would be met with mercy. Relocation to labor worlds where humans would serve the Empire. The humans had 72 hours to decide. 3 days to choose between submission and extinction. Then the transmission included images. The Caltharian fleet appeared on every screen. 9,700 warships, each one the size of a city. All of them aimed at Earth. All of them carrying enough firepower to burn the planet to ash. The images were clear, detailed, designed to inspire terror, designed to break spirits, designed to make surrender seem like the only option. Panic spread across the globe like wildfire. Some people rioted, burning buildings, fighting in streets. Some prayed, filling churches and temples and mosques. Some simply went home to be with their families, to hold their children, to wait for the end. Governments scrambled for responses. What do you say to an ultimatum from the stars? Military commanders knew they were outmatched. Their weapons were toys against such power. Scientists admitted they had no solution. No secret weapon. No miracle in development. But in that moment of terror, something unexpected happened. The Caltharian fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. 9,700 warships materialized in perfect formation. Their arrival sent gravitational ripples across space that Earth's instruments detected immediately. Alarms sounded in every observatory, every space agency, every military installation. The enemy had arrived. Jothik stood on the command deck and watched Earth appear on his displays. From this distance, it looked peaceful. Beautiful, even. A jewel floating in the darkness. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. He had seen many worlds die. This one would be no different. Just another planet. Just another conquest. Just another page in the Empire's endless book of victories. The 72-hour deadline had passed 3 days ago. The humans had sent their response. 3 words that meant nothing. Come and try. Jothik expected terror. He expected begging. Messages pleading for mercy. Offers of surrender with conditions. Requests for negotiation. He got defiance. It was foolish. It was meaningless. It changed nothing. The outcome was already decided. Written in the stars. Inevitable as gravity. He ordered a demonstration. Something to remind the humans of their place. To show them the futility of resistance. One of the destroyers targeted the human moon called Phobos. It orbited the red planet Mars. A useless rock. Dead for billions of years. The perfect example. The perfect warning. The destroyer fired once. A single beam of concentrated energy. The energy beam crossed millions of kilometers in seconds. Phobos simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there. The next moment, nothing. Not debris. Not fragments. Just empty space where a moon had been. The message was clear. This is what resistance earns. This is what defiance brings. This is the power we command. Surrender or die. Choose quickly. Choose wisely. On Earth, billions of people watched Phobos disappear. They saw the alien weapon work. They saw a moon erased from existence. They understood the power arrayed against them. The technology that could kill worlds. The force that could end civilization. Some lost hope. Fell to their knees. Wept for the future that would never come. But most felt something else. Something the Caltharians did not expect. Anger. Rage. A burning need to make these invaders pay. To hurt them. To make them regret coming to Earth. The world mobilized. Every nation contributed. Old weapons were brought from storage. Missiles from the Cold War. Nuclear warheads hidden for decades. Chemical weapons banned by treaties. Biological agents locked in secure labs. New weapons were hastily built. Factories retooled overnight. Civilian production stopped. Everything focused on war. Military forces assembled at strategic points. Armies gathered. Navies positioned. Air forces prepared. Scientists worked on desperate plans, trying to find weaknesses in alien technology. Everyone knew the odds. Everyone knew the truth. Everyone fought anyway. The Caltharian fleet began its approach. They moved slowly, deliberately, no rush, no urgency. There was no rush. The humans had nowhere to run, no reinforcements to call, no allies to help them, no secret weapons to deploy. This was inevitable. This was certain. This was already over before it began. The first contact came near Mars orbit. Caltharian scout ships moved ahead of the main fleet, probing, testing, mapping. They expected empty space. Cold vacuum. Nothing but rocks and radiation. They found mines. Hundreds of nuclear warheads floating in carefully planned patterns, hidden among asteroids, disguised as debris, waiting in silence. The humans had turned their most powerful weapons into space traps, had weaponized their solar system, had prepared for war in the darkness. 3 scout ships died in the first wave of detonations. The nuclear fires were beautiful, deadly, unexpected. The Caltharians were surprised but not concerned. Primitive tactics, expected from a primitive species. Nothing that changed the outcome. The fleet adjusted course and continued. More carefully now. More alert, but still confident. Then they reached Earth's orbital space. The humans had weaponized everything. Old satellites became guided missiles. Space stations became firing platforms. Communication arrays became cannons. Even commercial equipment was retrofitted with explosives. Tourist modules, weather satellites, GPS networks. Every piece of human technology in orbit was now a weapon. Every metal object was now a missile. The humans had turned their civilization into a bomb. The battle began. Human fighters launched from Earth. Small craft built for atmospheric combat but modified for space. Welded together. Barely functional. They were slow by Caltharian standards. Fragile. Poorly armed. Using rocket engines instead of proper drives. Chemical fuel instead of antimatter. But there were thousands of them. Wave after wave. Coming without end. And they did not hesitate. Did not slow. Did not retreat. The pilots flew with a recklessness that shocked the Caltharians. They rammed ships when their weapons failed. Crashed into destroyers at full speed. They detonated their own craft to damage enemy vessels. Turned themselves into bombs. Into missiles. Into weapons of pure desperation. They used tactics that guaranteed their own deaths if it meant taking enemies with them. Suicide tactics. Kamikaze runs. Death as a weapon. Jothik watched the tactical display with growing confusion. The humans were losing badly. Every calculation showed their inevitable defeat. The numbers were clear. The outcome certain. But they kept fighting. They kept attacking. They refused to break. Refused to surrender. Refused to stop. Even when it was hopeless. Even when death was certain. They came anyway. The Caltharians destroyed hundreds of human craft, thousands. The space around Earth filled with debris, with bodies, with wreckage. But they lost ships too. Not many, just 47, a tiny fraction of the fleet. But that was 47 more than Jothik expected. 47 more than any previous conquest. 47 that should not have fallen. For the first time in his career, he felt something unfamiliar. Something wrong, doubt. The fleet pushed forward. They reached the moon. Human defense platforms opened fire. Railguns, laser arrays, particle beams reverse-engineered from captured tech. More nuclear weapons. More suicide attacks. More desperate resistance that should have broken but did not. Should have crumbled but stayed strong. Should have ended but continued. The lunar bases were destroyed. Smashed to dust. Burned to glass. The orbital platforms were eliminated. Torn apart. Scattered across space. Earth stood alone, exposed, vulnerable, but the cost kept climbing. 100 Caltharian ships damaged. 50 more destroyed. Casualties mounting. Resources depleting. Time wasting. Jothik sent more forces. Committed more ships. The humans must break eventually. They had to. This was the law of conquest. The strong always defeated the weak. The weak always yielded to the strong, always, without exception. But the humans did not break. New weapons appeared. The humans had been studying captured Caltharian technology from the destroyed scout ships. Working day and night. Thousands of scientists. No sleep, no rest. They did not understand it. Not really. Not the theory. Not the physics. But they found ways to use it. To copy it, to weaponize it. Shield generators attached to missiles. Energy weapons reverse-engineered and mounted on ships. Power cores stripped from wreckage. Crude copies that barely worked. That overheated. That failed. But they worked, sometimes enough. The battle raged for days. Without pause. Without mercy. The Caltharians controlled the space around Earth. Held the high ground. Had every advantage. But it was not the easy victory they expected. Not the quick conquest they planned. Every advance cost ships. Every position cost lives. The humans defended with a ferocity that defied logic. That made no sense. That violated every rule of warfare the Caltharians knew. Jothik studied the human communications. Intercepted their transmissions. Listened to their plans. He needed to understand them. To predict them. To find the weakness that would break them. What he found disturbed him. The humans were not fighting to win. They knew they could not win. Accepted it. Understood it. They were fighting to make victory costly. To make conquest painful. To prove that taking their world would not be free. Would not be easy. Would not be worth it. This was a psychology the Caltharians had never encountered. Their previous conquests had fought to survive. To live, to see another day. They surrendered when survival became impossible. When hope died, when the alternative was extinction. The humans were different. They would choose death over surrender. Extinction over submission. Oblivion over slavery. It made no sense. It violated every survival instinct. But there it was. real, undeniable, terrifying in its implications. On Earth, the remaining military forces prepared for the next phase. They knew what was coming. The aliens would come, would land, would bring the war to the surface. The war would move to the ground, to cities, to mountains, to every corner of the planet, and humanity would be ready, would be waiting, would be armed and angry and absolutely unwilling to quit. The population mobilized. Not just soldiers, everyone. Factory workers made weapons. Scientists designed traps. Civilians learned to fight. Grandmothers learned to shoot. Children learned to build bombs. Every city became a fortress. Every town became a battlefield. Every home became a last stand. No safe places, no civilians, no innocent bystanders, just humanity united in defiance. The world united in a way it never had before. Old hatreds were forgotten. Ancient conflicts were set aside. Religious differences meant nothing. Political disagreements were fire fell from the sky. The 3 Caltharian battle groups entered Earth's atmosphere with weapons blazing. Energy beams carved paths through clouds. Plasma bolts turned air into fire. Missiles streaked downward, trailing smoke and death. Cities burned. Forests turned to ash. Oceans boiled where energy beams struck. This was the standard opening. Shock and awe. Terror from above. Break the enemy's spirit before the ground forces landed. Make them lose hope. Make them surrender. Make them beg for mercy. But Earth's spirit did not break. Anti-aircraft weapons opened fire. Missiles launched from hidden positions. Surface-to-orbit railguns that should not exist. Fired rounds at hypersonic speeds. Lasers cut through clouds. Particle beams reached for the sky. The humans had prepared. Every city had defenses. Every strategic position had weapons, bunkers, shelters, armories. They were primitive by Caltharian standards. Chemical rockets, kinetic weapons, nuclear warheads, but there were so many. Thousands, tens of thousands, wave after wave without end. The Pacific Battle Group lost 30 ships in the first hour. Not destroyed, but damaged badly enough to retreat to orbit. Shields failing, engines burning. Crews wounded. The Atlantic Group lost 25. The Asian Group lost 40. Jothic watched the numbers climb and felt his certainty crumble. Felt his confidence waver. Felt doubt creep into his mind like poison. The landing sites were chosen carefully, strategically. Open areas far from major cities. Places where Caltharian air superiority would matter. Where their technology would dominate. Where the humans would have no cover. But the humans had anticipated this. Predicted it. Prepared for it. They turned the landing zones into killing fields. Buried explosives under sand. Hidden troops in underground bunkers. Carefully planned ambushes from every direction. Nothing was as it seemed. Every safe place was a trap. The first Caltharian soldiers to touch Earth died within minutes. They wore advanced armor, energy shields, powered exoskeletons, carried energy weapons, plasma rifles, particle cannons, had training from 100 campaigns. But they found themselves in a nightmare. The humans used their own planet against them. They knew every hill, every street, every building, every sewer, every tunnel, and they fought with a savagery that shocked the invaders, a brutality that seemed impossible from such a weak species. In Brazil, the Caltharians established their primary landing zone. A massive operation, thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. It should have been a textbook operation. Secure the area, build a forward base, project power across the continent, establish dominance. But nothing went as planned. Nothing followed the script. Nothing made sense. The humans attacked in waves. Military units struck first. Conventional warfare, tanks, artillery, infantry with assault rifles. Then came the guerrilla fighters, irregulars, militias, resistance cells. Then the civilians. Everyone was a soldier. Everyone was armed. Everyone was willing to die. The Caltharians found themselves fighting children with rifles, old people with explosives. Entire families turned into resistance cells. No civilians, no non-combatants, just enemies everywhere. The Caltharian soldiers were bred for ship combat, trained in boarding actions, in taking installations, in fighting in the controlled environment of space. Artificial gravity, recycled air, predictable conditions. Earth's gravity was stronger than they were used to. Pulled them down, exhausted them. The atmosphere was thicker, harder to move through. The weather was unpredictable: rain, snow, wind, heat, all of it working against them, and the humans used all of it. Every advantage, every edge, every possibility. Rainstorms grounded Caltharian aircraft. The moisture interfered with sensors. Fog hid human movements, made thermal imaging useless. Heat waves degraded sensors, overloaded cooling systems. The planet itself seemed to fight against them. Every natural feature became a weapon. Every weather pattern became an ally of the humans. And through it all, the humans kept coming, kept attacking, kept dying by the thousands, but taking Caltharians with them, making every death count, making every sacrifice matter. Jothic ordered chemical weapons deployed, nerve agents, poison gas, biological agents, engineered viruses, bacteria designed to kill, anything to break the resistance, anything to stop the bleeding, anything to win quickly before the cost became unbearable. But the humans had been preparing for this too, had planned for it, had trained for it. Gas masks appeared, full-body suits, sealed shelters, underground bunkers, decontamination protocols. For every Caltharian advantage, the humans had an answer. Not a good answer, not a complete answer, but enough to keep fighting, enough to survive, enough to resist. Then the humans revealed their most dangerous weapon. They had been studying the captured Caltharian technology for weeks now, working day and night. Thousands of scientists collaborating across the globe, sharing data, pooling knowledge, working without rest. They did not understand the theory, could not grasp the physics, but they learned how to copy it, how to adapt it, how to weaponize it, how to turn the enemy's strength into their own. The first retrofitted missiles struck a Caltharian carrier in orbit. They should have been shot down, intercepted, destroyed. But they had stolen shield generators attached. Crude, unstable, overheating, but functional enough, long enough. The carrier was destroyed, torn apart. 3,000 Caltharian soldiers died in the explosion, vaporized, gone. It was the largest single loss in the entire campaign. The worst disaster in a war full of disasters. More attacks followed. Humans learned quickly, adapted quickly, improvised constantly. Every captured piece of technology was studied, dissected, understood. Every destroyed Caltharian ship was scavenged, picked clean, stripped of anything useful. What they could not understand, they copied. What they could not copy, they destroyed. What they could not destroy, they avoided. Simple, brutal, effective. The casualty count climbed. 500 Caltharian ships damaged, 200 destroyed, 50,000 soldiers dead, wounded, missing. The invasion was 3 weeks old. By Caltharian projections, Earth should have surrendered in 3 days. Should have been pacified in a week. Should have been colonized within a month. Instead, it was a meat grinder, a death trap, a disaster. Jothic sent a message to the High Command, a report and admission. He requested reinforcements, more ships, more soldiers, more resources. Admitted that the campaign was not proceeding as planned, was failing, was costing too much. Asked for strategic advice, guidance, orders. The response took 2 weeks. Light speed is slow across interstellar distances. It was brief. 3 sentences. Win quickly or withdraw. The Empire would not commit more resources to one planet. Success or retreat were the only options. But winning quickly was impossible. Every victory was temporary. Every position was contested. The humans would not defend fixed locations, would not hold ground. They would attack, retreat, and attack again. Hit and run, guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics. They used tactics from 1,000 years of warfare. From countless conflicts, ambushes, traps, psychological operations, propaganda, terror. They turned war into an art form, into science, into religion. The Caltharians began to feel something they had never felt before. Fear. Real fear. Not tactical concern, not strategic worry, but primal terror. They were dying on an alien world, far from home, alone, fighting an enemy that should have been weak but was not, an enemy that welcomed death if it meant killing one more invader, that celebrated martyrdom, that turned suicide into victory. On Earth, the cost was terrible, beyond calculation. Entire cities lay in ruins, reduced to rubble, to ash. Millions were dead. Tens of millions, billions were displaced, homeless, refugees in their own world. But the humans kept fighting. Every loss became fuel for resistance. Every death became a reason to fight harder. The Caltharians had expected fear to break them. Instead, fear made them more dangerous, more determined, more willing to sacrifice everything. Then came the turning point. The moment that changed everything. A human special forces team captured an intact Caltharian destroyer. It was damaged but repairable. Stranded in low orbit with a dead crew, human engineers studied it, learned it, understood it. Human pilots learned to fly it, trained on simulators, practiced in secret. Within a week they had it operational, functional, armed. The first human crewed alien warship entered the battle. A hybrid, a mongrel, a symbol. It was crude flying. The humans barely understood the controls, could not read the displays, could not speak the language. But they understood enough. Understood weapons, understood shields, understood thrust. They used the destroyer to attack other Caltharian ships. The confusion was devastating, terrifying. The Caltharians hesitated, trying to identify friend from foe, running recognition protocols, checking codes. The humans did not hesitate. Just attacked, just killed, just moved forward. 2 more destroyers were captured. Then a frigate. Then a cruiser. The humans learned faster than should have been possible, faster than any species in Caltharian history. They improvised solutions to problems, created workarounds. They ignored safety protocols in favor of effectiveness, were willing to risk deaths for results. They were reckless, dangerous, unpredictable, everything the Cal. The operation was called Last Stand. It was a name chosen carefully, deliberately. The humans knew what it meant, understood the symbolism. This was their final coordinated strike, the last organized offensive. After this, they would have nothing left. No strategic reserves, no secret weapons, no hidden armies, just the will to fight and die. But that had always been enough. That had always been the weapon that mattered most. Every nation contributed. Every remaining military force prepared. Every soldier volunteered. Every pilot stepped forward. Scientists finished their final modifications to captured alien technology, made last-minute adjustments, tested systems one final time. Engineers readied every weapon that could still fire. Repaired damaged equipment. Improvised solutions. Soldiers said goodbye to families they would never see again. Wrote final letters. Made peace with death. The plan was simple. Brutally simple. Launch everything at once. Every nuclear weapon. Every missile. Every captured alien device. Every satellite. Every ship. Every fighter. Every bomb. Hit the Caltharian fleet with such overwhelming force that their defenses would collapse, would fail, would break. Not elegant. Not sophisticated. Not clever. Just brutal mathematics. Just raw numbers. Just overwhelming power concentrated in one moment. Jothic detected the preparations. His sensors showed the massive buildup. Energy signatures. Heat blooms. Electromagnetic activity. He knew what was coming. Could see it building. Could feel it approaching like a storm. He ordered his fleet to prepare. Shields at maximum. Point defense systems online. All ships ready to intercept. All weapons charged. He had fought defensive battles before. Had repelled attacks. Had survived assaults. This would be no different. Could not be different. Must not be different. He was wrong. The attack began at dawn, simultaneous, coordinated, perfect timing. Thousands of launches occurred simultaneously across the planet. Missiles rose from hidden silos, from underground bunkers, from mobile launchers. Ships lifted from damaged spaceports, from makeshift platforms, from converted civilian facilities. Satellites adjusted their orbits for collision courses, changed trajectories, committed to their final mission. The sky filled with fire and death, with trails of smoke, with the roar of engines, with the light of 1,000 suns. The Caltharian point defense systems engaged. Energy beams lanced out. Interceptor drones launched. Counter missiles fired. The first wave of missiles was destroyed, vaporized, shattered, then the second wave. Then the third. The defenses were working perfectly as designed. The attack was being contained. Was being stopped. Was failing, but the waves kept coming. Like an ocean. Like a flood. Like a hurricane. The humans had not sent a few missiles. Not hundreds, not thousands. They had sent everything. Every weapon, every warhead, every explosive device on the planet. Thousands of warheads, tens of thousands. More than any defense system was designed to handle. More than any fleet could stop. More than anyone thought possible. The Caltharian computers prioritized targets, made calculations, ran algorithms, tried to create an optimal response, tried to find the solution, tried to survive. The humans did not care about optimal, did not care about efficiency, did not care about tactics. They cared about overwhelming, about saturation, about raw, unstoppable force, and they succeeded. Nuclear explosions blossomed across orbital space. White-hot, blinding, beautiful in their terrible way, not clean strikes, not precision hits, not surgical attacks, just raw destructive power on a scale the galaxy had not seen in centuries. Thermonuclear fire, fusion reactions, the same power that lit stars unleashed as a weapon. The Caltharian shields held against the first impacts, absorbed the energy, dispersed the heat. Then they began to fail, to crack, to shatter, to die. Ship after ship died, exploded, broke apart, burned. Some from direct hits, nuclear fire consuming them, some from cascading failures, systems overloading, some from debris impacts, shrapnel traveling at orbital speeds. The perfect formation shattered. Like glass, like ice, like hope, the coordinated defense collapsed. Fell apart, became chaos. The fleet that had conquered 23 worlds broke under the assault of one. One primitive planet, one stubborn species, one absolute refusal to surrender. Jothic watched his armada disintegrate, watched decades of planning die, watched the Empire's pride burn. The tactical display showed only chaos. Red indicators everywhere. Ships offline, crews dead, systems failing, reactors exploding, shields gone, weapons silent. In 6 hours he lost more vessels than in his entire career. 2,300 ships destroyed, erased, gone in one day. By one planet, by one species that should have been weak. The humans did not stop. Could not stop. Would not stop. Even as their launchers ran dry. Even as their satellites were destroyed. Even as their last ships fell from the sky. They kept fighting. Ground-based lasers fired until they melted, overheated, failed. Railguns shot until their barrels warped, until the metal gave out. Until physics said no more. Soldiers launched themselves in spacesuits with explosives strapped to their backs. Human missiles, human bombs, human weapons of pure desperation and absolute determination. Jothic finally understood. After weeks of confusion, after countless defeats, after watching his fleet die, he understood. The humans were not fighting to win. They had never been fighting to win. Could never win. Knew they could not win. They were fighting to make conquest impossible. To prove that taking their world would cost more than it was worth. To show the galaxy that humanity could not be conquered without destroying them completely. And that destroyed humans had no value, no worth, no use to anyone, and they had succeeded. The remaining Caltharian fleet was broken, not defeated in the traditional sense. They still had superior technology, still had numbers, still had weapons, but they had lost something more important, more fundamental, more critical. They had lost the certainty of victory. They had lost the will to continue paying the price, had lost the belief that this was worth it, that Earth was worth it, that any planet was worth this. Jothic ordered a retreat, a withdrawal, a flight. His officers protested, argued, demanded they continue. They could still win. With enough time, enough resources, enough sacrifices, enough deaths. But Jothic had done the math. The cold calculations, the brutal arithmetic. To conquer Earth would require destroying it, burning it, killing every human. And a destroyed Earth was worthless. A dead planet had no value, no resources, no purpose. It would cost everything to gain nothing. The withdrawal began. Ships pulled back from planetary orbit, retreated, fled, gathered in high orbit, regrouped, counted losses, prepared to jump to hyperspace, to run, to escape. But the humans were not finished. Not done, not satisfied. They launched one more attack, one final strike. The 3 captured Caltharian ships, crewed by humans who barely knew how to fly them, who could barely control them, but who knew how to fight. They charged into the retreating fleet. Weapons firing, shields blazing, engines roaring. It was suicide. Everyone knew it. The pilots knew it. Command knew it. Everyone watching knew it. But the human pilots did not care, did not hesitate, did not slow. They were buying time, giving their world a few more minutes, A few more hours. A few more chances. They were proving one final point. One last lesson. Humanity would fight to the last ship. The last soldier. The last breath. The last heartbeat. Would never quit. Never surrender. Never kneel. The Caltharian fleet destroyed the human-controlled ships easily. Quickly, efficiently. 3 ships against thousands. It was not even a fight. But the attack caused chaos. Delayed the withdrawal. Created confusion. Gave Earth's remaining forces time for one final strike. One last attack. Missiles that should have been depleted hours ago suddenly appeared. From hidden silos. From secret locations. From places no one knew existed. The humans had held back reserves. Not for victory. For vengeance. For one last cut. One last wound. One last mark. 66 more Caltharian ships died in the chaos. The retreat became a rout. Became a panic. Became a flight. Ships jumped to hyperspace without proper coordination. Without full crews. Without waiting for damaged vessels. Without following protocol. Just running. Just escaping. Just surviving. The largest invasion force in Caltharian history fled from one primitive world. 8,330 ships had come to conquer Earth. 83 were leaving. Less than 1%. A disaster. A catastrophe. A legend of failure, but the humans were not done. Still not satisfied. Still not finished. As the Caltharians fled through the outer solar system, more attacks came. Mines that had been placed months ago. Hidden among asteroids. Waiting in the dark. Automated weapons platforms on distant asteroids. Long-range missiles launched from Mars bases that everyone thought were destroyed. That should have been destroyed. That appeared to be destroyed. The humans had prepared for every possibility, including defeat, including loss, including death. They had planned for it all. 6 months after the battle, the 17 Caltharian ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of their home system. They transmitted identification codes, old codes, codes that should have belonged to a victorious fleet, requested docking clearance, explained their situation, waited for the response that would determine their fate. Execution or exile, court-martial or mercy, death or dishonor. The High Command was silent for 3 full minutes. 3 long minutes of waiting, of wondering, of fear. Then the clearance came. Permission granted. The survivors were ordered to the main military station. Report immediately. A full inquiry would be conducted. Questions would be asked. Answers would be demanded. Jothic knew what that meant. Courts-martial, executions, public shame. The Caltharian Empire did not forgive failure, did not tolerate defeat, did not show mercy to commanders who lost. But first they wanted his report. Wanted to know what happened, how it happened. Why 9,700 ships could not conquer one primitive planet. Why 2 million soldiers could not defeat one species. Why the greatest invasion force in history returned with less than 1% survival. Jothic stood before the assembled admirals and ministers, the most powerful beings in the Empire. Behind him, holographic displays showed the battle data. The numbers that seemed impossible. The losses that defied belief. 9,700 ships sent. 17 returned. 2 million crew departed. 40,000 came home. The worst defeat in the Empire's 1,000-year history. The first true failure. The first real loss. The first time the Empire had been beaten. He delivered his report with military precision. No excuses. No justifications. No attempts to shift blame. Just facts. Cold hard facts. The humans had refused to surrender. They had fought with tactics the Caltharians had never encountered. They had weaponized their own extinction, made death into a weapon, turned suicide into strategy. They had proven that some species cannot be conquered, not without destroying them, and destroyed worlds had no value, no worth, no use to anyone. The High Command listened in stunned silence. Some refused to believe, demanded recounts, asked for verification. Some demanded explanations. How could this happen? What went wrong? Who was responsible? Some simply stared at the data as their understanding of the universe changed, as their certainty crumbled, as everything they believed proved false. The Caltharians had built an empire on the certainty of their superiority, the confidence of their strength, the inevitability of their victory. Earth had shattered that certainty, broken that confidence, ended that inevitability. Then the recordings were played. Video from the battle, audio from communications, data from sensors. Humans flying ships into Caltharian vessels, pilots laughing as they rammed fighters into destroyers, soldiers detonating themselves to damage installations, singing as they died, civilians fighting with crude weapons against armored invaders, old people, children, everyone fighting, everyone dying, everyone accepting death. The audio was worse. Human communications intercepted and translated, calm voices coordinating suicide attacks, laughter as pilots rammed their fighters into destroyers, songs about death and defiance, joy and sacrifice, pride and martyrdom. The Caltharian officials watched a species that welcomed death as a weapon, that turned martyrdom into strategy, that fought with a joy that made no logical sense, a happiness that violated every rule of survival. These were not the actions of a desperate species. These were the actions of a species that understood violence on a fundamental level, that had perfected it over millennia, that saw war as natural, as inevitable, as something to be good at, to excel at, to master. The verdict came quickly. Surprisingly, Jathic was stripped of rank, his honors removed, his name struck from the rolls. His officers were dishonored, demoted, dismissed, but they were not executed, not killed, not even imprisoned. The High Command understood. This was not cowardice, not incompetence, not failure of will. This was something new, something the Empire had never faced. A species that could not be conquered by conventional means, that could not be defeated without being destroyed, that made victory impossible without making it worthless. The recording spread through Caltharian space, leaked, shared, broadcast, then beyond. Other species had been monitoring the invasion, watching, waiting to see how the mighty Empire would absorb another world. What they saw instead changed everything, changed the galaxy, changed the future. Humanity became a legend, a myth, a warning. Humanity became a legend, the species that defeated an empire, the world that destroyed a fleet, the people who chose extinction over submission, death over slavery, oblivion over conquest. Some species saw them as heroes, saviors, proof that empires could be beaten. Others saw them as monsters, demons, proof that some species were too dangerous to exist. All saw them as dangerous, as powerful, as something to fear, to respect, to never underestimate. The Caltharian Empire faced internal crisis. If they could not conquer Earth, what did that mean for their other holdings? For their other conquests? For their other subjects? The conquered worlds began to whisper, to hope, to plan. Maybe they too could resist, could fight, could win. Some attempted rebellions, uprisings, revolts, most failed, were crushed, were destroyed. But the seed was planted, the hope was born. The Empire was not invincible, was not unstoppable, was not eternal. On Earth, humanity rebuilt, slowly, painfully. Cities were reconstructed, brick by brick, building by building. Casualties were mourned. Names were remembered. Graves were filled. Memorials were built. But something fundamental had changed. Something that could never be unchanged. For the first time in history, every nation on Earth shared a common experience. They had fought together, bled together, won together, died together, survived together. Old conflicts seemed petty now, meaningless, irrelevant. Ancient hatreds felt foolish. Territorial disputes felt small. Religious differences felt trivial. They had faced extinction together, had stared into the abyss together. Everything else was small by comparison, insignificant, not worth fighting over, not worth dying for. The United Nations reformed into something stronger, something real. Not a world government, not a single nation, but a true alliance, united by shared trauma and shared triumph, united by blood and fire, united forever. The captured alien technology was studied intensely, obsessively. Human scientists worked together across all borders, all nations, all languages, sharing data, combining resources, pooling knowledge, learning at a pace that shocked even themselves. Within 2 years, they understood the basics of Caltharian engineering. The principles, the theory, the foundation. Within 3, they had improved on it, made it better, made it stronger, made it human. Humanity had something the Caltharians lacked, something unique, something powerful, desperation, hunger, the absolute need to never be vulnerable again, to never be weak again, to never be victims again. They advanced in 5 years what should have taken 50, jumped centuries and decades. Fusion drives became standard. Shield generators were mass-produced. Energy weapons were refined, improved, perfected, made cheap, made common, made universal, and they built ships, not copies of Caltharian designs, not inferior imitations, but human designs. Built for human tactics, fast, aggressive, designed for crews who did not fear death, who saw ramming as a valid strategy, who would turn any vessel into a missile if it meant destroying an enemy, who fought like humans, like warriors, like survivors who would never quit. 5 years after the invasion, humanity achieved faster than light travel, cracked the secret, solved the problem, built the drives. The first human starship was named Defiance, a perfect name, a statement, a promise. It was a warship, armed, armored, dangerous, crewed by veterans of the invasion, by survivors, by warriors. It carried a simple mission: go into the galaxy, make contact, deliver a message, show the universe what humanity had become. The message was recorded in every language humanity could translate, every known alien tongue, transmitted on every frequency, every channel, broadcast to every listening station, every observatory, every ship. The words were simple, clear, direct, backed by the evidence of what humanity had done to the Caltharian fleet, by the proof of human determination, by the reality of human strength. We did not ask for war. We did not want it. We did not start it, but we ended it. Come to Earth in peace and you will find friends, allies, partners. Come in conquest and you will find graves, death, destruction. We offer trade. We offer knowledge. We offer alliance. We offer friendship. But we offer something else too. A warning. A promise. A guarantee. We are humanity. We do not surrender. We do not kneel. We do not give up. We would rather burn our world than let someone else take it. Rather die free than live as slaves. Rather face extinction than accept conquest. Remember this. Remember us. Remember what happened to those who forgot. The message was received across 100 worlds. 1,000 stations. 10,000 ships. Some species dismissed it as bravado, empty threats, meaningless words. Others recognized it as truth, as fact, as reality backed by evidence. The Caltharians did not respond, could not respond. They were too busy dealing with the consequences of their defeat. Rebellions in 3 systems, 5 systems, 10 systems, trade disruptions, economic collapse, political upheaval. The empire that had lasted a